been so much has been focused on the business community. And we thought that business is very important for Luxembourg. Lots of things are important for Luxembourg, but business we believe is important too. So we wanted to at least have one solid event that focuses on the needs of the business community. And actually the purpose of this event tonight is twofold. One is to give us an opportunity to ask the major political parties what they think about issues that are important to the business community. And the other side of it is to give you all the opportunity to tell them what you want. So we hope tonight we can achieve both objectives with a little bit of friendly dialogue between people who all love Luxembourg. None of us would be here if it weren't for the fact that we love this country, and we want the purpose for this event tonight, and that's to announce that AmCham has a brand new committee. And our brand new committee is a government relations committee, which we are looking forward to launching, that we believe will help us in our dialogue, helping and supporting the government as we go forward into the next government. And I'm very pleased that Yuriko de Lorenzo, who is sitting over here from Amazon, is going to be the committee chair of that committee. We have already gone to Brussels and talked to AmCham EU about partnering together to discuss legislation at EU level, and that has been very successful, but we will do more of that as we go forward. Having said that, and knowing that we're on a tight schedule, it's my pleasure to introduce Jorrit van der Meulen, who's going to give a short welcome on behalf of Amazon. Jorrit.
Thank you, AmCham, and thank you everybody for giving us the opportunity to host this event here at our Luxembourg Kirchberg campus. I'd like to take the opportunity to particularly welcome the different political party representatives. It's nice to see some familiar faces and some new ones. And I'd also like to introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, which is probably most people in the room, my name is Jorrit van der Meulen. I've been at Amazon since 1999. I've been at Amazon in Luxembourg for the past 12 years. And I'm responsible for our EU stores organization, which means that I'm responsible for the teams that get the products that are retail, and more importantly, our small business and our small businesses sell on Amazon to customers throughout Europe. So Amazon is deeply embedded and invested in Luxembourg and more broadly in Europe. In fact, this year marks the 20th anniversary of us being here in Luxembourg, and I just got to celebrate that with Commissioner Leonard and a bunch of other Amazonians over in the Expo Center. We have 4,250 employees here in Luxembourg. When I got here, I think there were less than 300. It now makes us the second largest employer in Luxembourg, and we're pretty proud of that, and we're proud of having our European headquarters here. I would be remiss, since I'm holding the microphone, if I didn't do what you suggested and give at least two of the many things that are kind of on our mind at Amazon. First and foremost, regulatory certainty and predictability is critical. It's critical in ensuring that Luxembourg and Europe remain an attractive investment opportunity. The recent trend to restrict or discriminate against non-EU companies at the European level is, to be quite frank, worrying. Second, an open and integrated EU single market we hope should stand at the heart of EU and the next Luxembourg government. It provides the scale for an attractive investment. It helps the small businesses that we work with to trade seamlessly throughout Europe and globally, supports innovation and the green transition. I could go on, but I'm not going to. I'm going to pause and I'm going to hand this over to you, David. He'll guide our distinguished speakers through a set of relevant questions that I'm sure will be informative and spirited. At the end, you'll have a chance to further discuss it at a networking and cocktail event at the front of the building. Thank you again. Thank you for coming. Thank you for letting us host it. David, the floor is yours.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank Amazon for hosting this event and giving us their beautiful room here for this debate. So it is also my pleasure and my honor here to introduce our distinguished speakers. I will start with Yuriko. She is our Minister of Finance. Before that, she was Maréchal de la Cour, and before that, she had a very distinguished career in our diplomatic service. To her right and to my left, we have Claude Turmes, Minister of Energy and Zoning, and before that, he was member of the European Parliament. To my left and to your right, you have Yves Cruchten, who leads the LSAP, the Socialist Party's fraction at our parliament. And to his left, we have Laurent Mosar, who is member of parliament, former échevin of the city of Luxembourg, and before that even the president of our parliament. So I have two types of questions, and they all revolve around the economy. And I will assume that you have some background knowledge, and I will not rattle down inflation numbers or GDP numbers, etc. I will assume that you're generally familiar with the environment here in Luxembourg. So my questions are how to attract and retain businesses in Luxembourg, and how to attract and retain talent in Luxembourg. And I have about a dozen questions, and I hope that we'll be through before 8 so that you can ask questions. Of course, here in my questions there are a number of very important topics that I will not touch, but that may be very dear to your heart: security on our streets, etc., etc. So without further ado, we will start with measures to retain and attract business to Luxembourg. And I've divided that into tax measures and then the business environment. Let's start with the tax environment. And I will start here and we'll change the order. Laurent, does your party favor a reduction of the headline corporate tax, which is currently around 25%, depending on which commune your business is located?
Yeah, thanks also to AmCham for the organization of this very nice event, also for Amazon to host this important event. I'm very happy to be one of the speakers tonight, and I think the topics that have been chosen by David are probably the most important topics also for the future of our economy. I would perhaps, David, if you allow, begin with one important point I want immediately to underline. Personally, and it's also the opinion of my party, also of my head candidate, Luc Frieden, we think that actually our economy is not more attractive and competitive as it should be. If we look a little bit at the different rankings, we see that Luxembourg has lost some places in different rankings. So for my party, for myself, it's very clear. We are clearly against any tax increase. We are also very clearly against new taxes. And to answer directly to your question, I will be very clear. We think that actually the corporate tax is too high compared to the OECD average. Actually, the OECD average is around 21%. We are actually around 25% if we take the city of Luxembourg, that I know very well. In other communes in Luxembourg, it's higher. So we are 4 points over the average. And I think we have to reduce that corporate tax, not in one time. We have to do it in a few times, but it's very clear that in the next 5 years we have to approach the 21%.
Yves, what's the opinion of your party on that topic?
You might be surprised, but it's slightly different than the one that you just heard. Let's keep in mind that in the past term we have already lowered the corporate head tax. We did it actually also in 2 steps. I remember we were not so long ago at 29% and we lowered it now to, I think, is it 24.9 at the moment, if I'm correct. Let's also not forget that the real effective tax in Luxembourg is only around 16%. And also let's not forget that on international level we have finally reached an agreement that we are trying to introduce a minimum tax everywhere that would be situated around 15%. So I don't see it as an urgent measure to reduce now corporate tax, but the next government should focus on reducing tax for low and middle income people. Something that we had promised already for last term, but COVID made it impossible, and I think this promise has to be kept in the next term.
Yuriko, would it be financial harakiri to reduce the corporate taxes as Laurent suggested?
No, I don't think so. And also from my side, I'm very happy to be here tonight and see so many people. Before I answer your question, I want to underline that here, of course, parties are responsible for sending their representatives, and I want to underline that I don't participate on panels anymore where I'm the only woman, but since today, it's the parties responsible. I see so many women here, so thank you. No, reducing corporate tax, I must say, I have to agree on this one with Laurent Mosar. The OECD average and the EU average are lower than what the corporate tax is in Luxembourg. EU 21%, OECD 23%, and for the Democratic Party, we want to have and remain competitive for our economy, and therefore we do believe that we should be moving towards the EU and OECD average corporate tax. Corporate tax has been decreased 3 times in recent years, but I think, and that's the opinion of the DP, that we can go further. But to react to something that Laurent Mosar said as well, we can talk about attractiveness of our economy. I just want to mention there was a recent EY attractiveness report where it was underlined, and this is not me saying it, but EY, that 46% of correspondents who answered the question said that they were happy to either stock up their activities in Luxembourg or move their activities to Luxembourg, and this figure has never been so high. And I think during the course of the evening we will be discussing, there are many things also that I think need to be done that can be improved. Many, we will discuss them, but to just say we are no longer competitive, that does not respond to any reality. Thank you.
But at the same time, we're dropping from all the league tables, IMD, etc. Track competitivity.
There are competitiveness, there are many different surveys. In some we go up, in some we go down, sometimes we are overtaken by others. Of course, also in Parliament, I see this becomes interesting when we drop a notch down. When we go a notch up, which also happens, it's no news. So, then let's also say when we go a notch up, because it also happens.
Thank you. Claude, what's your party's opinion on the corporate tax?
I think that the attractivity of Luxembourg is not only due to tax, it's due to world-class infrastructure. And I think what I got recently is, what is the real problem for a company to come to Luxembourg? Can my children go to a school? So does our government have enough money? So we can of course promise everything, and that's what Frieden said, lower the corporate tax, lower the tax for everybody, and then where is the money for what I think is the real priority of this country, which is, do we have enough schools? Do we have enough teachers? I understand that for Amazon, For other companies, that's a real problem. So I want enough money on the table to invest into schools and teachers. The second thing is the issue of, I think Luxembourg is attractive because we have peace. There is no striking, but we have too many working poor in Luxembourg. Why do we have so many working poor? Because we are basically in a conflict between we have not enough affordable places to stay for low income, and it's difficult for us to raise the minimum income, because if we would do it, we would penalize a number of smaller companies. So I think what is a priority for us in the next government is investing into the building stock, so much more, and now we are speaking about 3 or 4 times more money for the public building investments, but I think this has to go to 10, 15 to make a difference, and of course this has to be accompanied by less bureaucracy and speeding it up. I have some ideas about that, how that the government could be better coordinated on that. And the second issue is, I think it's even not enough to lower the taxes for the low income, because the low income don't pay a lot of taxes in Luxembourg. What's the low income in a country where you can't afford to raise the minimum salary need is what we call crédit d'impôt. So the lower income needs input into them so that in the time between having enough affordable places to stay, these people can still have a good life in Luxembourg. And that is what is the precondition for basically the peace we have historically without having really these good agreements with trade unions and with the business community. So I think that's the key issues. And I'm also, I think, Yuriko, we have basically, it's when we have so often, we have heard during government, we can't do this, we can't do that, there's not enough money on the shelf, and that we have to be a bit cautious about the future. So I'm a bit puzzled by all these promises of lowering taxes, knowing that we need gigantic investments into mobility, into schools, and into the places where people stay. So I'm a bit puzzled by all these promises to lower
So in
taxes.
short, you would not lower the corporate tax?
The first thing we have to do is we will see how the elections go. Then, if my party is in the next government, the first thing we will have is what are our priorities? And I think our priorities is above all to stay a world-class country for infrastructure and to keep the social peace. And if there is money left over, and I have my doubts on that, then of course we could discuss things. But if we go for lower taxes, it has always to have, in a certain sense, a green conditionality, because I think we can discuss about everything this evening. The real priority of this whole world is preventing dangerous climate change, and that needs also money.
Claude, my next 2 questions are precisely on that topic, but they're also related to tax.
Go ahead.
So, Yuriko, you recently opened our embassy in Dublin. And I hope it was not to be the first one to greet the investment funds that moved from Luxembourg to Dublin. Like Amundi, which announced that they were moving close to $7 billion under management to Dublin. So my precise question is, it's the taxe d'abonnement, that's the tax on the investment funds, and would your party, we start with you, but then we'll ask you also, be prepared to reduce the taxe d'abonnement to 0 for funds that promote ESG, environment characteristics, as foreseen in the EU legislation?
Thank you. So I think what we have introduced in the past year is precisely lowering of the taxe d'abonnement for taxonomy, even taxonomy plus funds. So we are really moving in that direction to encourage investors to go in that direction of ESG compliant or taxonomy compliant investments. This is very important to us because we want to be sustainable, a green financial center, and we are very proud, and there, according to some rankings, we are 5th greenest financial center in the world. Your precise question is, do we want to go to nil? Well, that sounds very good and very popular among some, but I prefer to also be honest and not just think in the next couple of months, but think long term. I think that's important for any politician to think long term, because saying reducing the taxe d'abonnement to nil means basically in the medium term getting rid of the taxe d'abonnement. So if that is the objective, which can be an objective, somebody also needs to tell me how we are going to fill the hole in the budget, which is 1 billion euros. How are we going to fill that? So that is the question.
About funds that are.
Yes, but if you're going to, yes, but we hope that we can encourage funds being all taxonomy plus compliance. So if you in the end want to encourage funds going down that road, and if you say there's going to be that's going to be nil in the end, that means basically getting rid of the taxe d'abonnement. And if we do that, which is a request, we have discussed this a lot with the sector. Then that's what it means. We have to fill a gap in the budget at some point of 1 billion. And well, that's a big question. But I think what we do have to say is that we are an international fund center. We are number 2 in the world. We are number 1 in Europe. And the taxe d'abonnement has not kept us from being a successful international fund center.
Good. Well, Laurent, your party is the party that wants to reduce taxes. What Yuriko is saying, at the end, all the funds will be forced to be ESG compliant and comply with taxonomy. So, at term, the whole tax d'abonnement, the 1 billion will disappear and we'll have a huge hole in our budget. What is your party's?
Yeah, I'm a little bit astonished about what Mrs. Bacchus has said, because this government has lowered the ESG funds, the tax d'abonnement, to 0.001.
1 basis point.
1 basis point. And it's not working, because Mrs. Bacchus has answered me some weeks ago in the chamber that only one fund has benefited from this 1 point tax d'abonnement. Why? First, I think the procedure is too complicated. So, and I think we will speak later about this whole administrative burden for our companies, but only on this point, it's very complicated. I have been speaking with some specialists of fund management, and they told me it's very difficult to understand what they have to fulfill. And therefore, I would really ask Madame Bacchus, and she knows, she has a big heart also for the fund industry, first to make this procedure easier. Second point, I think we all want more ESG. We all want more products which are ESG. So it would be a fantastic signal to the world, to the whole fund industry, if we would go to zero for all the ESG funds. And let's be realistic. Not all the funds will be in the next 3, 4, 5 years ESG, because these ESG criteria are actually only valid in the European Union. But we have many, many countries, not only in the European Union. So please, we want, and I think we agree on it, with Claude we agree on it, we want to be the first green finance center. And we have the chance to be this first green finance center. So for us, it would be really important to go to 0.
Yves, what is your party's view on the issue?
No surprise here as well. First of all, I would like to say that I am here in replacement of Mr. Franz Fayo, who is speaking today in New York at the United Nations. But when he told me to come here, at first I said no, and then he told me there would be free drinks at the end. And then I said, okay, now you got me, so I don't want to waste our time. I will just tell you, no, we don't want to put the tax d'abonnement on 0. We have lowered it from 0.05 to 0.01. I think that's fair, that's justified. We should encourage ESG funds to go in the direction of ESG, but everyone in this country has to pay their fair share to make everything work here in this country. And also funds have to do it, and that's why we don't want to lower it to 0.
Okay, thank you. This reform of what the government did under the leadership of the finance ministry to get a lower tax for green and a higher tax for fossil, that was an explicit ask also from our side, and we did this together. And of course, it takes some time for the whole industry to get really then into a big momentum. And what I think, and also I talk also to actors around this, I think that we need to have to institutionalize more the whole ecosystem around this ESG. And LuxFlag is a good start, but we think, as it's in our program, that LuxFlag has to be upgraded. It must get more firepower. CSSF is already, let's say, getting more firepower on it. I think they were quite disappointed in these days on the first reports, which shows that even major banks and major funds are not deep enough into it. So it's a challenge. I think for me there's two things. One is what we did was the right move, and now we need, in a certain sense, and there I can agree with Mr. Mosar, it must be simpler, and it gets simpler if all the fund managers have a more sophisticated and even more professional basically ecosystem around them to advise them to go into the direction. And I think we have a fantastic opportunity to be among the number ones of green finance, because we need the finance to go green, because we cannot afford anymore any fossil investments.
Thank you. I will skip the next tax question and move to the business environment. And the first obvious question, which I fear will bring a consensus among all the parties, relates to indexation. A topic difficult to explain to the CEOs that own businesses here in Luxembourg and are located outside of Luxembourg, but which keeps the social peace. So the question is not to get rid of the indexation, but to change some aspects of the indexation. For instance, capping salaries. Okay? An indexation of 2.5% is different in monetary terms for someone on the minimum salary than for someone who earns $1 million and more. The basket used to measure the indexation has also been challenged, and people say make it more green, take out tobacco.
Maybe airplane tickets, for instance, in today.
And third is the number of index tranches per year. So I don't know where we start. Let's start with you. Is your party prepared to look at the index and make changes?
Look, we come from 5 years of a success story around the index. We were in a very difficult situation with COVID, afterwards with Putin's aggressive war in Ukraine, which is a war against all our Western values. And we were able, as one of the few countries in Europe, to keep calm, to keep competitive, also because we have these tripartite measures, And we moderate energy, which were really gas prices frozen, electricity prices frozen, which helped us to be the country which historically has one of the highest inflation rates, to be, during this crisis, the lowest or the second lowest, maybe with Spain. So we have shown that we are able to cope with it. And I think I probably agree most with Yves that if you want equality in society, that happens through tax policies. So if Q1, which is the 20% worthiest of Luxembourg, we have Statec, which shows that they are today, I think they have 7,500 euro more in the pocket, more what we call Kaufkraft, despite all the inflation, than before 99. And so if we think that we have to re-equilibrium, then we do it through taxation policy, and I think that is my party's view and probably also Yves' view. And then the last point, do you understand what is the game in these days on inflation in Europe? Have you understood that we have two guys who are driving up the inflation, and that we have to do everything to escape that these two guys are ruling us also for the next decade? It's the guy who is probably responsible for the murder of Khashoggi, and it's Putin. These two guys are in these days pushing up the barrel price almost, now we are almost at 100. And I'm pretty sure that ECB, without that move last week, would probably have said, we stall and we don't go higher. So be aware that Europe, as long as it is so dependent on fossil, with having almost, and that's one of US, but you have some fossil in the ground, which should stay there for climate reasons, but you can act. We have nothing in the ground. So we have to accelerate the green transition. And the faster we go, the less fossil will be in the indexation measurement instrument. So at the end of the day, that is the most important, to get out of this geopolitical dependency, which today even leads to ECB having to go more strict on investments in Europe and then without having this dependency on oil. And so that is for me one of the win-win on the edge between geopolitics and also climate change.
Yuriko, what's your party's view on the indexation measure?
I will be slightly shorter. I think you said it, David. The indexation system is part of Luxembourg's DNA. I talk, of course, a lot with companies in Luxembourg, outside of Luxembourg, and for them, based in Luxembourg, difficult to explain the indexation system to their headquarters. If their headquarters are outside of Luxembourg, what the indexation system is about. This doesn't exist in so many other countries. And of course, we always explain social peace, etc., stability, that also counts for a lot. But I understand for companies, this is very difficult, especially in inflationary times, to deal with this. They may budget one index into their budget, but not 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. And that's the situation we were in now, in these, as a consequence of the illegal aggression Russia is waging on Ukraine, where we really saw very high inflation also in Luxembourg. And with the measures that we took, decided by the government in the context of tripartite, we managed, as was said, really to keep inflation very, very low and have one of the lowest inflations in Europe. If we hadn't taken the measures, inflation today would be double. This is not me saying it, but these are from figures from the Statec. And the government decided, again in the context of tripartite, also now to compensate, help out companies during these few months, including January, to cover this indexation that companies have to deal with. precisely because we want companies to continue to stay competitive, also operating out of Luxembourg. So this for us was very important. For us, modulating, discussing a different kind of index, we can have these discussions, but my party, the DP, is in favor of having these kind of discussions in the context of tripartite together with social partners, because that's for us really the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We move to the opposition. What's your party's view?
Yeah, on this point, I agree with Yuriko. We are also in favor of this indexation system because of the reason Yuriko has just underlined. I think it's an important guarantee for social peace and also political stability. And I think this country has made really good experiences with this indexation system, so we don't actually see any reason to change. But I want perhaps to add 2 points. The first point is that actually we must know that some more taxpayers, because of the non-adjustment of the tax rate to inflation, they pay more taxes because they get the indexation. They come in another category, tax category, and so they pay more taxes. So the indexation is not an advantage for every taxpayer. We must be very clear on that. Second point, and I agree with Yuriko, we say clearly that if there will be more than one indexation tranche per year, then the tripartite has to come together and to discuss if there could eventually be reporting, if it could be modulated, if perhaps the government can, like he has done this year, eventually support a part of this additional index tranche. So for us it's clear, yes to the system, but if there are more than one index tranche per year, we have to discuss.
Yves, what's your party's view on the topic?
But the indexation has done us very good services in the past, and I'm sure it will also give us good services and do favors in the future. Of course, my party is strongly tied to this system that we have, that I can understand that it sounds strange looking at it from the outside, but let's keep in mind, over all the last decades, this has done us good service. And I can agree with everything that was just said. I would like to add one more point. I also think it keeps us, or it helps us to remain attractive for highly educated foreigners coming to work here to Luxembourg from abroad. If we abandon the indexation system, then salaries will stagnate like everywhere else, and I don't think that would do us a big favor on that field. And to the inflation, I would just like to add, we've just recently read that the inflation in Europe, all over Europe, is for more than half of it is profit-driven. And it's not a socialist think tank saying so, but it's the IMF saying so. So I think that this is, at this special moment we have now in Europe and in Luxembourg, the indexation is a good tool that we should keep. And if we have problems in the economy, then we have to call the tripartite, like my fellow colleagues have just said, and we have always managed to find solutions. And I strongly believe in that tool of social dialogue.
Thank you. A topic that could carry us very far, and I would ask you to be as concise and precise as possible, because we have a lot of other questions. Red tape. Red tape, cutting red tape, building permits, opening a business, renovating a business. Please name the 3 measures that your party would sponsor immediately up and taken government responsibility. Laurent, you start this time.
Yeah, for us it's very clear the burden of administrative is too high. We have to reduce it. We propose 3 measures. First, we propose to reduce this burden at least at 20%. Second measure, we propose a fast procedure for authorizations, especially business authorizations, eventually also other type of authorization. And third measure, I think it's very interesting measure, we propose to submit any law draft to a check of administrative burden for companies. That means if a law draft is bringing additional administrative burden for companies, this draft has to go back to the government, and the government has to check if he cannot find other solutions in order to avoid it. I think this is really interesting measure. Actually, it's also discussed in Chamber. So, our 3 measures.
Thank you.
Cutting red tape means diminishing bureaucracy.
Yes.
Oh, I can say whatever I want because our party program doesn't say a word about that. So I'm free to tell you whatever I think. I agree with everybody complaining about bureaucracy in Luxembourg. Let's not forget that it also often is there to, the long procedures are often due to very important things that we have in our laws, in our system, that we have to protect the rights of people, that we have to protect the environment. So, but I would agree with anyone and everyone that would say, let's set up a task force in next government and let's identify what we can accelerate, what we can do better.
Thank you. Yuriko.
Yes, I agree. We have to be more efficient. We have to be faster in all of these procedures. My party, the DP, has a lot of points in its program ahead of the elections. I will not go through all of it. You asked for 3. One idea would be to have a code de la construction, where really we bring everything together, all the laws together, perhaps see what has to be done, but make it more transparent, make it all come together for it to be better understandable. Another thing would be a guichet unique, where also all the information comes together, whether it be for permits, whether it be for subsidies, where people know, companies or people know exactly where they're at, where their fine is at. We also want to introduce a limit to, not have construction permits or, go on. 5, 10, 20 years you hear such stories. That's just not acceptable. We cannot afford to wait so much time before we get certain permits, so we really want to introduce 3 months limits. Otherwise, it's acquis that you have the right to do that. I would agree also on the point of having some kind of a red tape check. We would want to do that, especially for SMEs, to make sure that the burden for small and medium-sized companies is not too high. Thank you.
Thanks. Claude, we're running out of time to build a sustainable economy, and procedures are too long. So what is your party proposing?
Go fast. So, and the red tape is, for example, also in the city of Luxembourg, if you want to set up a heat pump, a solar. So, I have proposed last week a document to ease the authorizations at the local level for solar panels, heat pumps, charging stations. So, and I think that at least when it comes to my area, so energy and this, today the bureaucracy of the local government in the city of Luxembourg is higher than the bureaucracy in my ministry. That at least I'm confident about that. What is my take? I was in Brussels 18 years in the European Parliament. I always thought Europe is complicated. 27 countries, and so on and so on. I'm a very young minister. Only 5 years. I can tell you what this country needs is a better way of a real culture between administrations and ministries to work together. And because that is not the culture today, and that leads to enormous, almost Kafkaian situations. And my experience as the Minister of Zoning, is that, for example, my ministry was able, on 2 or 3 really completely dead files, what we did is really bringing the ministries together, basically shutting them into a room, obliging them to take positions, and then very important, what I learned as minister, the CV, so the compte rendu, how do you call this in English? The report of the meeting, the minutes, have to be done for the next morning, 8 o'clock. Because I have several times as a minister, I came out of meetings, I said, I had in my mind, we have decided 1, 2, 3, but there was no minutes written. And months later, civil servants had reopened the file, despite the fact. So my proposal, and that we have already endorsed it also in the new document on zoning, is the Ministry of Zoning, for everything which is territorial, should get a role of coordination and then forcing ministries and administration to work. And I can promise you that that will speed up things.
Thank you. We have 2 more questions regarding the business environment. Yves, if I read your party's program, work will be the short period of time between 2 long vacations. So, reduction of working week to, I don't know if it's 36 or 32, adding another week of vacation. Is that a good idea when we're struggling to get people to work in certain industries, in certain sectors?
Indeed, it is a good idea, otherwise we wouldn't propose it, because it will also, it's also a question of attraction of Luxembourg, and we see that in our neighboring countries, at least in 2 out of 3, work time reduction has already taken place, or is going to be deepened. So I would like to say a few things about it. When one thinks about work time reduction, one first thinks of work-life balance and more time for this and more time for that. But it is also a question of productivity, and we see that in many studies that have been conducted abroad. There was one in the UK that was supervised by Cambridge and Oxford, so it was not just one stupid study, but it was a serious study. Companies have tried it for a period of 6 months, and 9 out of 10 companies that participated in the program said they would stick to the reduced working times, because then people are more happy, they are less sick, they feel that they are just as productive as if they were working 8 hours a day instead of 6 hours. My part is now 38 hours, and I understand the difficulties everybody can have with it when thinking about it. But let's also, and that is my biggest point personally, let's keep in mind that in the future we will not have enough work for everyone. The speed with which artificial intelligence is coming, we as politicians cannot keep up that speed. And it will eat up many jobs, especially in the middle sector of labor. So we would be left, if you're not a specialist or an engineer or a technician or a simple labor person, then your job will be at risk. And I'm really afraid that this evolution is coming much faster than we think and that we can anticipate. And therefore it is good that we start discussing working time already now.
Laurent.
Yeah, you imagine that I don't agree with my friend Yves on this issue. Some days ago we had a conference at the Chamber of Commerce, and the party colleague of Yuriko, Claude, when he was asked, said such a measure would mean harakiri. I would repeat a little bit the same. In the actual situation, reducing working time would be really irresponsible. We know with which problems our companies, especially small and middle-sized companies, have today, every day, to find qualified people. You know, not only in small and middle-sized companies, also in the big four companies. I just had a discussion with a colleague from such a big four company. They are actually looking for people in Mexico. Because they don't find any more people in Luxembourg, in the great region. So you imagine, in the actual situation, reducing working time cannot work. I would add that we can, and that's what my party is also suggesting, we can discuss about a better organization of working time in the companies, together with the direction of the companies, and why not work during certain months, winter time, perhaps less, and work more during summer times. That could eventually be a possibility. So we are not against a better, a more efficient organization of working time in the companies, but we cannot agree with a legal reduce of the working time.
Claude, so my party also has the same analysis on artificial intelligence. We want a better work-life balance. I think especially for parents with kids when they are small, because okay, we have a fantastic, even for free system of childcare, so going to creche and so, but at the end of the day, I think the best basically place for children when they are small is with their parents. So I think we should ease that and talk to anybody who is in a club of football or chess or what any societal engagement. I think we have to reward people who engage in society, be it in care, be it in organizing sport, culture, and so on. So that's two areas. And I think what we see as Greens, what we have difficulties is, for example, we have definitely not enough people in hospitals. We definitely don't have enough people on craftsmen, so I desperately need people to put up the solar panels and the heat pumps. So I think we should have a discussion, but then because we have been so successful with tripartite, so it has been sector specific. And where I agree with Yves is this has to be a key point of the next government, that we find a method to discuss this. And then some parties will be for a law, and maybe after having discussed with the social partners, we need a frame for it. But I think first we need to be sector specific and to discuss it with the partners, whom we have so well geared our economy and our country over the last decades.
Yuriko.
I think working less and having the same salary obviously sounds fantastic. Huh? This sounds absolutely fantastic. In my work balance at the moment, that sounds really good too. But no, when we're talking about productivity here, as Yves said, somebody really needs to explain to me how a bus driver who would now today he's driving 40 hours, then reduced to 38 hours for the same salary, how this person would be just as productive. It doesn't work. So the work still needs to be done, but the working hours are reduced. In today's world, in Luxembourg, where we are already looking for working people, we don't have them, this becomes very difficult. This may make sense in economies where unemployment is high. In Luxembourg, we don't have that problem, even though it went up slightly, but we don't have that problem. So even if we were to find these people to do the job that now, with the working time reduction, isn't done anymore, what does that mean? That has as an immediate consequence that traffic would still increase, that housing prices, which are already quite high, would still go up. This is, on top of everything, a huge burden on companies. Or we tell people, well, now you work 38 hours, but you have to do the same job. I would think this would lead to lots of situations of burnout. So for us as well, this is not something that should be dictated onto companies. If companies think this is a right model for them, we would gladly accompany them this way. For the DP, there are many other ways to deal with this, such as flexibilization, indeed making working hours per year, because there are moments where you need to spend, you want to spend more time with your kids, where you may want to spend time with taking care of older people, of your parents. So I think there are times in life where you can work more, there are times in life where you need to spend a little bit more time elsewhere. So we don't want a diktat, and we don't think this would be something that would help our economy today.
Thank you. We have 3 more questions, I don't need 10 minutes. AAA, a nice to have or a must have?
It's a total indispensable must for our economy, but not only for our economy. It's not something that's abstract. AAA rating is very important for many different reasons. I can go on about this for hours, but I will try to be short. I travel a lot in the last, since I'm in government. This is a topic that always comes up when you're trying to attract investors. The AAA is something, wow, this reflects a sound economic performance, it reflects sound economic finances, it reflects stability. It's something that is important for investors. It also is important, and I try to explain this also to people sometimes. I mean, you are mostly representatives from companies, so I think you are very well aware of the importance of a AAA for an economy, but for, say, the average citizen who is not so exposed to companies or international finance, this is also important for people, because a loss of the AAA or downgrade of the AAA means that also debt financing in Luxembourg becomes more expensive for any country. Say now in the case of Luxembourg, already now we are paying, it's gone up from 100 million a year to 500 million a year. If we would lose the AAA, debt financing would become much more costly, which means, as a consequence, money that you don't have for people, for schools, for roads, you don't have as subsidies or help, or help companies. It's money that will not be there. So keeping the AAA is absolutely indispensable, not as something abstract, but something that has a direct impact for our economy, for our companies, and for our citizens.
Yves, capping the national indebtedness to 30% of the GDP, is that something nice to have or something must have?
It's a goal that the government had fixed itself, and I think it does right to do that. To fix an objective, and we keep it. And we do our very best to keep it. But I must also tell you, we are now approaching closer to this fixed limit of 30%. If, let's hope it's not the case, if next year another pandemic comes, we will be forced again to invest into our companies, into our people, to save jobs and to save our healthcare system and whatever. And we need to take a lot of money, public money, to spend. And in those cases, I don't think it is a dramatic situation to go over those 30%. I think one should not see this as this one fixed limit, but that we should look at it over time. See over a couple of years, a longer period of time, that the governments and that Luxembourg tries to keep this this limit. And because I very often agree with Mrs. Buckes, but also on this, I really think it's important that Luxembourg keeps this status of AAA, even though I don't like the idea that there is non-elected, undemocratic private organizations that I don't know where they are and who they are, that they rate the countries. I think that's a strange concept in my mind, but the world is as it is and we have to live with it. And therefore I think we have to also try to keep this AAA.
Let's ask Laurent.
This AAA, and I agree on that point with everything that Yuriko has said.
Thank you. Claude, do you share a different view?
No, I think for a small country like us with an open economy, it's important that we don't get into basically a trap of being almost completely caught up by repaying debt, so it's okay. But what I'm a bit puzzled is still we need investments in schools, in mobility, in a lot of in the building stock, and then we promise a lot of tax reductions. And good, or we are honest that I don't see how you can lower a lot of taxes and then still keep the investment side. And therefore, as I told you again, I hope that the parties who promise you tax reductions and very high investments, that they don't disappoint you after the 8th of October.
I don't see how you can propose to raise taxes and think that companies will come running to Luxembourg who want to pay for higher taxes. So the risk of increasing taxes both for companies and for private individuals, you risk losing the companies and these.
But sorry, we have agreed to raise the CO2 tax, and now suddenly you say that you, as I had hoped that you agree with me, and we have discussed it in the government that certain things need to be taxed, and CO2 needs to get its price. And then contrary to CSV, we compensate the lower income, because that is what I'm really puzzled when I look to the CSV program, is the CSV wants to delete the credits, the tax credit with which we guarantee that the lower income don't pay for the CO2 tax. I think we need, and I have not called for raising taxes, but certain goods which are bad for society, I think you need to get them a price, and that's what we did in the last.
We talked about taxes for corporations, for investment funds. The last question is for people. Would you tax successions? Would you tax wealth? Yuriko.
No.
Okay.
No and no.
Yes,
Yves.
I would tax wealth, not succession, but wealth. And I will just explain shortly why. If we cannot continue seeing the gap between the rich and the poor get bigger and bigger and bigger, and every time when it's about that the rich people pay their fair share and contribution to society, then we find excuses why not to do so. That's why I think.
Then quickly tell us, what is wealth? Is it your real estate?
It's everything.
Your car?
It's everything.
Your artwork?
It's everything. I know it's difficult. It's difficult to evaluate, and we had a tax that we abandoned. We were in government with the CSV back then. We abandoned it because it was ineffective. So if we find a way to introduce an effective wealth tax, which is in other countries happening as well, in Belgium, in Spain, and in most of the European countries, this is being discussed. So I don't think we can escape this.
Would you be prepared to reintroduce a wealth
It's
tax?
very clear, 2 times no, but I want to add one point, because I'm a little bit astonished about what our colleague Claude Turmes has said. I have sometimes the feeling that, Claude, you don't see what is going on here in Luxembourg. Speak a little bit with people from the finance center, speak a little bit with leaders from companies. We have really a big problem of attractivity. We are no more attractive compared to many countries, not only in the European Union, but also outside of the European Union. I give you 2 examples. The fund industry. 10 years ago, we had approximately 75% of the market shares of all UCITS funds. Actually, we are at 55. 20% that we have lost in 5, 6, 7 years. Actually, we have not only the concurrence of Dublin, we have the concurrence of Paris. Why? Because Paris has introduced a very attractive impatriate regime, and it's very successful. So, we have the concurrence not only of Dublin, we have it also of Paris. So we cannot say everything is okay, we don't have to analyze what is actually the situation. So please, Claude, go a little bit around, speak with the people. And I'm really, I don't want, I'm angry, but I was, this afternoon I had a lunch with business people from Belgium. They told me, what did happen in Luxembourg? You are no more attractive. We will be more attractive in Belgium soon. So let's be serious.
You don't need to have everything in Belgium.
We have to discuss seriously all these issues.
Good. I will stop asking questions here. I will just tell you what questions you missed. One very important one where I would have welcomed the views of Minister Turmes. We are a very small country, and I don't think that we can solve all the problems in the constraints of our border. And we have to think Grande Région, just like, for instance, Geneva does, Basel does. And for the moment, that's not done, and that's not done.
Oh, sorry. And you didn't give me the microphone for the last question, so
I'm sorry.
I take the joker. May I? Okay, so I have worked over the last 5 years to rethink about what could be a vision for Luxembourg. And the vision is Grand Genève. What is Genève doing, or what is Genève? Genève is like Luxembourg. It is a global dynamic economy with almost half of its workforce living in another country. And Genève has 4 years ago launched a process, Grand Genève 2050, with their neighbors. And I went to Genève, and then we copied this, and we improved it a bit, what they did, and we called it Luxembourg in Transition. And as a result, we have now in our zoning, new zoning PDRT, our new zoning 2035, we have enshrined for the first time that our territorial planning must be on the same size than our economy and our work, where our workforce come from. So we have enshrined that the next governments will be bound to work much more together with Lorraine, with Wallonia, and with the German part. And it's not about, so the Grande Région is a good thing, and without that, during COVID, it would have been very bloody. But what we need even more is this ring of local authorities which are around Luxembourg and where the commuters come from. And we have to make sure that this border is no more visible in daily life. And I'm proud to have found money now in a European budget, which is called attaract, so that we can now launch the first structural, investments decided by the local authorities on the different borders of the country. So it's a start, and then of course we are also with Transpire discussing, for example, a big battery investment cannot happen in Luxembourg because we don't have the place for it. You need hectares and hectares, we don't have. But probably our next industrial policy will be to team up, for example, with Lorraine, which has hectares and hectares of former industrial land, maybe doing a joint venture. So the financial arrangements of a new company coming to this area, done in Luxembourg, maybe the research done here, and then the bigger factory where we don't have neither the workers to attend, nor the space located in Lorraine. And we may have an opportunity even now soon to have a first big project in this way of thinking.
So Luxembourg, we wasted a lot of time. If you go on the website of Grand Genève, you will see a strategy, a vision and measures.
But you go to the website of my ministry. You have
yes, and then when you go on the website of your government colleague in charge of Grande Région, the only thing he reports is courtesy visit of the ambassador of France. That's the only thing he notes on his website.
But on my ministerial website, you see Luxembourg in transition, the new zoning, and we have to dare what I call the Grand Luxembourg. We have to really say we are the attraction point of this region, and we have to organize it on a fair basis with our neighbors. That's the future of our economy.
Good. I think that's, for my part, I will invite, we are 10 minutes over time, I will invite the audience to ask questions. So please try to be very concise and precise. I'm sure you have valuable political opinions, but don't use this platform to share with us your political manifesto. Yes.
Hi, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy campaign schedules and government responsibilities to meet with the business expat community. I've been here over 20 years, and I'm just going to tell you what my experience has been, not what I've seen in statistics or reports or on the news. But I remember when I came here back in 2002, I mean, man, all these US companies were coming here, and we were traveling around. I was working at one of the big four, and everybody wanted to come to Luxembourg. And right now, the only things I see coming to Luxembourg are alternative investment funds, frankly. And you know what I had today? I had a conference call with one of my multinational US clients, and they're figuring out how quickly they can get out of Luxembourg because there's too much regulations and the taxes aren't good. And you know, and then I go to New York and I visit a distinguished New York lawyer, and they're like, oh, Luxembourg, yeah, it used to be competitive, not so much anymore. These are just this is just my experience, all right? This is not what I said, this is what I'm seeing. And, you know, one of the things I heard is, you know, I'm in the tax role, I'm a tax lawyer, and right now economic substance is so important. You can't just set up a holding company and move profits here and get a tax ruling. That's all dead and, you know, for archaeologists, right? But so you have to have economic substance, and to have economic substance, you have to attract credible decision makers, right? You know, executives, you know, people that have some level of credibility, some level of education, decision-making powers. And you know, our offices in Ireland, they've got a really great regime to attract talent to Ireland, and even the Netherlands has one. And I heard even now, high-tax, anti-business France, as we're supposed to believe, has a really good regime to attract talent. And I think, you know, like a few years ago, we had this really great warranty scheme, which was widely applied to many executives across industries, and it was giving them about a 20% rate, and it was replaced with this new dividend incentive, which, I mean, I haven't seen anybody benefit from that, frankly. It's got a very narrow application. So I would say one of the key measures to make Luxembourg competitive is please, after the election, you guys get together and come up with something meaningful where you can attract executives to come to Luxembourg and give them, I don't know, a 20%, 30% rate. Otherwise, why are they going to come here? I mean, I love Luxembourg. I like, you know, it's a beautiful country, but are you going to attract people from New York or London or wherever to come here and pay high taxes when they can get a lower tax where they're living? Anyways, thank you. I'll listen.
Thank you very much for sharing. At least from my side, from the Ministry of Finance, I'm always open to discussions with actors present in our economy. 3 short points. You mentioned regulation. A lot of the regulation that we have in Luxembourg comes from Europe. So we, as a government, at least myself also, when we have files discussed by finance ministers, very much pleading for smart regulation and not constantly more and more and more regulation coming from the EU. So this is something I'm very sensitive about, really trying to have the regulation. I mean, regulation is not all bad. I mean, and we've seen with the turbulences on the financial markets, we see what has happened in the US. We've seen what has happened with the Swiss bank. Regulation is good, but we need smart regulation. That's what we're pleading for. You talked, we haven't, yes. Second point, talent. We didn't discuss that so much here, but time is running out. It's a subject that I discuss a lot with companies here. We know that times now have been rather difficult, but still, even in these difficult times, with this year's budget, I've approved 2 measures that were in place concerning talent. It's the profit sharing scheme and the Patriot scheme, which have been improved. But of course, there is still more to be done. I'd be happy if I could work in the future to make these 2 measures more attractive. Other measures that you can look up in the DP program, stock options, it's something that we would like to introduce again. You mentioned the warranty scheme. This was abused, so unfortunately we had to get rid of it, but I would very much plead, and it's written in our program, that we do introduce further and improve further measures to attract talent. This is also to attract, I mean, we want to keep talent and attract talent that is high level, that has a lot of experience. We also want to attract young talent. And for young talent, for example, and you will also read this in our DP program we have as far as housing is concerned, also measures that would help young talent immediately. I could go on, I know time is limited, but my last point would just be I'm very happy that Bank of America has come to Luxembourg, and I'm very happy, I think it's next week, to open their offices here. Thank you.
So, I propose that the 2 last questions go to Laurent and Yves. So, if you have a question for Laurent,
it would have been interesting to ask, because I have also some answers to give to this gentleman, because I agree completely. First, concerning the attraction of talent. Okay, we didn't have the opportunity to speak about it. We have some proposals in our program concerning, for example, this famous prime participative. We have to extend this regime. We have also some proposals concerning the second and the third pillars pension. I think we have to introduce also some fiscal incentives. We have also other proposals. But I want to point out another important issue, and I agree a little bit on that issue with Yuriko. It's what I call the over-regulation from Brussels. I agree with everything that has been said. We need regulation. Regulation is not always bad, but if I look a little bit, what is coming from Brussels, for example, concerning money laundering, it's completely crazy. And you see what is the consequence of that. And I have put this point on the agenda, that many companies are no more able to open a simple account on the bank. You imagine that. More and more companies are not capable of, because the banks have a lot of compliance to execute. So it's getting more and more impossible. I just met some friends who told me, listen, we have now every authorization from the ministry, but we are not able to open a single bank account. And so I think this is also not a good publicity for Luxembourg. We want to be one of the most important finance centers in the world. And our banks are no more able to open a bank account. Yuriko, she has done many efforts on that, I recognize it, but it's not sufficient. For us, it must be very clear. If tomorrow we will be in the responsibility of the government, we will introduce an obligation for the banks to open bank accounts for companies.
I just want to react that we have not done enough for opening bank accounts. The government is not responsible for giving instructions to banks. We are no longer in that era. we own 3 banks, and it's very clear that government does not give instructions. This is a different era. We have supervisory authorities that would be find it very strange if the government was giving instructions to companies which accounts are to open and to see what kind of risk-taking.
Yeah, but you can change the law. You can change the law.
And to introduce the law obliging companies.
It's in the European directive.
No, it's not. We have transposed the European directive
Not on that.
absolutely correctly. Yes, we have. And then look it up, because we have transposed the European directive absolutely correctly. But governments do not give instructions to banks about the risk that they will take. And I think banks would not appreciate having a law that tells them how much and what kind of risk to take. There are different measures in place today, and we are being very closely watched by the European Central Bank, by Frankfurt, so we cannot do as you are suggesting, telling banks what to do. But I will say what we have done, and I think it's important to mention this, because also to me, many people have spoken about the problem of opening bank accounts. I'm very much aware of this. We have sat down a long time ago, already a couple of months ago, to talk with the ABBL, to talk with the CSSF, to see what can be done. We're talking about mutualization solutions. The Chamber de Commerce has also recently made a very good contribution to also explain to companies how to open accounts. There are procedures, but please let's not go back to strange times where governments tell banks how to operate and how much risk to take.
So we will take a last question, the gentleman there.
Okay, you go ahead, ladies first.
Thank you. Thank you for your time and for the very interesting discussion. I do have a question. I think I can say that businesses operating here in Luxembourg are very proud to contribute to the economy and to pay their fair share of corporate tax, especially in a period in a world where corporate tax is strongly harmonizing in Europe over time. Greater certainty and clarity in the dealings with the tax authorities become a key factor in maintaining the trust that is needed to retain and attract businesses. Perhaps in some cases, more than the actual tax rate or specific incentives, businesses value clarity, reflected in legislation, administrative guidance, and in open and transparent dealings with the tax authorities. This is crucial, and why I would be interested to hear your thoughts on how to enhance the strength of the Luxembourg tax authorities so as to further build that trust and for it to be an engine of growth.
Let's take your question too, and then we ask each of the candidates to address the 2 questions, and then it's time for the drinks.
Yes. My question was related to this gentleman's issue about talent and attracting talent to Luxembourg. There was a very interesting article in today's Luxembourg Times where, as Minister Backers mentioned, the unemployment rate in Luxembourg has gone up slightly. Yet what was interesting about that figure was that the category which saw the biggest increase in unemployment was the category of people under 30 who had the most qualifications. Now, if we have a shortage of talent in Luxembourg and the category of unemployed, which has increased the most, is the category of most qualified, there seems to be something wrong with either the recruitment policy of companies or maybe how people are educated locally in the country. If we need to attract talent, I think there should be far more discussions between the industry and the public sector, specifically the universities, as to what talent, what qualifications do you need in industry to actually fill the gap, the talent gap that we've had in Luxembourg. I've been here for 34 years and I've heard the same story for the last 34 years. There's a problem. Industry doesn't talk to universities, and universities don't talk to industry. There should be more public-private partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you. I will let each candidate react to these two statements and questions, starting with Yves, who hasn't spoken for a long time. So you're free to address the question whichever way you feel.
Yes, well, I'll make it short because I can agree with both the gentleman and the lady that spoke. I mean that there was no real question here, but a statement, and I fully agree with you, and that is a problem that we have to tackle. We have to bring together universities and economy. And also, I agree also with you that there is not just the tax level. There's so much more to it. And I think, well, now we are in the election period. All the parties are discussing different things. I might have shocked some people by my ideas tonight here. I understand that. But after these elections, the government will form whoever is in that government. And there will be, again, like the past years, and that, I think, was a quality for Luxembourg, that we always had a clear path where we're going, and also a direct line to the people. So it was easy for companies to get in touch with decision makers and get to know what are you planning, what is happening. And that, I can assure everyone, that will go on. Whoever is in this government, maybe not if the far right, but all the other parties, I can assure you, they will continue on that path.
Good. Somebody has stolen my microphone. I think on talent, the University of Luxembourg, I give you one example, SNT, which is the branch of IT, is attracting brains from all over the world. So what we have to enhance is really this kind of specific, and I agree, industry has to talk to the university to do specific masters which fits into the profile of the talents which the industry needs. And that is something which has started, but which can be improved. And then on the other question, I think tax authority, and Yuriko knows that much better than all of us. The Luxembourg tax authority needs modernization. We are working on that. We are dedicating a serious amount of money to that, and that will help what you are asking for, which is more clarity. So I think that's one of the jobs we have started, but which has to continue into the next government.
Good. Laurent?
Yeah, thanks for these very, very interesting questions. I agree, we need a much closer cooperation between the Luxembourgish University with our industrial sector, but also, for example, with our finance center. This is very important. Concerning the corporate tax, I agree also with the lady. Perhaps I would add one point. In these different rankings, we only see what we call the display rate. That means this is 25%, and if you compare this 25% with other countries' rates, we are higher than other countries, and that's a little bit a problem. But you are completely right. It's not only a question of rate, but we have also to see all the other elements.
I get the last word. Thank you. 3 points, and thank you for raising the question about the tax administration. I agree with you. We need to modernize, we need to digitalize, we need to have a better dialogue between the tax administration and companies in Luxembourg. I think we've really gone there from one extreme, and the pendulum really needs to come back from one extreme to the other, and the pendulum needs to come back to the middle. We are working on this, and it's something that I hope I will be able to very much improve in the future. My second point is I agree with what has been said. The University of Luxembourg is a very important actor, and we need to produce nationally, locally, much more talent. It's directly connected to the talent question. So the more brains we produce here that stay, they may go to other places, but also with Luxembourg for Finance, we have a lot of contact also with universities outside of Luxembourg, but producing also more talent in Luxembourg is essential, which leads me to my third point. Still connected to talent, we talk a lot about talent, but we have so much talent that is underutilized in Luxembourg, and I'm talking about, again, talent of women, which for me is extremely important, and as women within their companies exceeding leadership positions, I think this is a very important part of talent and talent strategy in Luxembourg, where we could really be a model example as an international finance center. I've also created a task force with people from the economy, really to work together, see how we can make a difference there. And I'm sure this will also help improve the talent problem that we have, to keep our talent here, to attract more talent here. And I think women are a very important part of this. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the candidates. You've seen the differences, you've also seen the commonalities. Unfortunately, many of you don't have the voting power. It's regrettable.
Not yet.
And I hope that the next government will also extend the voting powers to people who come to Luxembourg, bring their families, contribute to creating the wealth here, also can, not only in the local elections, but also the national elections. Paul, you close
Yes.
the event and invite us for the drinks.
With great pleasure. First of all, you all coming tonight shows that you care for Luxembourg. So my thanks to all of you for going ahead and joining us tonight. When we get into the cycle of going ahead and having a new government after the elections, we intend to go ahead and extend another invitation to the new government to do another Let's Talk About Business in order to make Luxembourg strong event. And I wish all of you and your parties good success, and obviously from our point of view, we are advocating for you to a little bit consider that the business community is where the money comes from. You guys get to spend it, but we're the ones who at the end of the day give you most of the money. And if you want to make Luxembourg strong, you have got to take care of the business community. There was one suggestion saying we should think a little bit about where we can get the money from, where to do this, where we can get the money from doing that. From our point of view, we said Google wanted to go ahead and put an enormous structure in Luxembourg. They guaranteed it would not use an ounce of water without it being recycled and put back, and it couldn't get done, it was blocked.
No, sorry.
Wait a second, I'm talking.
Yeah, sorry, you decided not to come to Luxembourg.
They decided to not come to Luxembourg because Luxembourg and certain people in the Luxembourg government made it difficult. But anyway, it's my microphone for the moment. So, there are issues like that. As another place of where to go ahead and get money, our friends we all have IKEA stuff, and everybody that I know from IKEA wanted to put their factory in Luxembourg, but no, where do we put IKEA at the end of the day? We put it just across the border, so that all the Luxembourgs can conveniently drive to it, and spend the money that they make in Luxembourg, and then go ahead and bring the products back, but all the tax revenue stays in Belgium. So, all I'm saying is, please, and I know we have two people who I deeply love and respect, who know a lot about business, but there are a lot of people in the Chamber of Deputies who really don't know much of anything about business, and I would hope in the new government we could put a little bit more effort into engaging with the business community to go ahead and make sure that we all do what we need to do to keep Luxembourg strong. And my very last point is to say, I deeply thank Minister Backus, because we have tried for a year and a half to go ahead and change the law so that women who are accompanying spouses of people with work permits have the right to go ahead and live and open companies and work in Luxembourg. We finally got it done, and I guess I thank everybody, because every political party that elected it. I have to say that I thank Minister Backus for the enormous support that she gave us for making that happen. That's sort of a close, but please let's go and have drinks. Thank you so much.